All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining. This is Coffee with Ty. And today with Steve, I'll be introducing Steve in just a second. Today's topic is going to be all about leveraging your service team and making them your sales team. Just a little bit on what we're going to cover. So obviously we're going to do some quick introductions. I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce Steve, and then he's going to actually host the bulk of the meeting today. After that, I'll talk to you about job opportunities that are available with current clients, a partnership that I want to share with you guys, and we'll talk about what's happening next time on the coffee session. So let's jump right in. All right, so that's me on a really good day with good lipstick. What I do along with the team is I work with companies that are usually in a hyper growth mode, and they need to mature their customer experience team. When I talk about maturing the customer experience team, think of it in terms of a company that's going from 1 employee to 10 employees, or from 100 customers to 1,000 customers. A lot of the processes that are set up initially don't exactly translate. So what we'll do is we work with you to help you set up your organization for scale. And that includes focusing on people, process, and technology. So we will help you find the right people to fit the roles long term. We will redo your processes, and we'll also introduce technologies to you, or leverage the ones that you currently have to make them do more. So this includes automation of workflows, maximizing employee productivity, including the right key performance indicators, the right structure, making sure that the responsibilities are lined up, make sense, and are producing value for you. So that's a little bit about Workforce Pro. I'm going to introduce you all to Steve Lavendier. Steve is going to actually host the majority of the meeting. So Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Ty. I'm excited to give this presentation. I have 30 years experience in call center programs. Quite a bit of inbound, majority is outbound. I've set up about 100 outbound programs for different companies. Certainly Keurig and Mars rings a bell. Both of them in the coffee or the food service business, and I was certainly in their beginning stages, and then continued for quite a few years. So with that, turning your service team into a sales team, I'd first, like to ask a couple of questions. I certainly know, there's a few people as we move into the first slide. What types of products or services do you guys offer? Don't all jump in at once.
Yeah, this is Oscar. I offer professional services, management consulting, and advisory services.
Okay. Thank you, Oscar. Anybody else? So with Oscar, do you take, being a professional and a consultant, do you take your own calls, or do you have people that take them?
I take my own calls. It doesn't exclude other people taking calls, and have taken calls with certain organizational structures I've used in the past. So it's both, I would say.
Okay, and are you available to take those calls, that 8 to 5, 9 to 5, or is someone setting up an appointment, even to take the phone call?
Yeah, I have a platform in place through a call service that schedules.
Okay, and does that call service also have other customers as well as yourself that take those calls?
Yes.
Okay. Certainly, you have a service that we've been involved with a number of times. And so when your calls come in, they're mainly an appointment or a demo, what have you, for the type of call. A lot of call centers, and if you may, we'll call it a call center, and a call center could be 1 or 2 people, and it could be 5 to 10, and it could be 50. You know, they take these calls and they have these lulls. Quite a few of them do. So if you have, so in your case, so if someone is working a shift from 6 to 8 hours and they have multiple contacts, multiple customers like yourself, they've taken these calls, you know, they'll take multiple customers' calls, so it's one after another. There are quite a few businesses, whether you have your own product, and in this case, we can call it coffee, or your own service, and you have reps taking calls, then certainly there are lulls during the day. You know, we used to say, you know, you order your hotels and airline tickets between 9 and 11 and 1 and 3. What's everyone else doing in between? So what we're talking about is taking your service reps and making them salespeople. And certainly the gaps is, you know, the first place to start. If we go to the next slide, you know, what type of work are your reps doing with these gaps? So a lot of people will tell me, well, we have them doing paperwork, or we have them, and some say they have them making these calls. When they're making these calls, we say, well, how are they making these calls? What are they doing making these calls? We don't have a lot of answers because we have software to take these calls, to track them, but are we tracking what they're doing in between? And with most cases, there are a lot of projects, products, services that you have these gaps to make these calls. Now, we'll be talking about CRM at another time and with other guests, but there are some CRMs that obviously do both, and that some we're not talking about the CRMs, you take the inbound call and then you have a follow-up on it. Obviously, if you have to do some of that work in between, then you're doing it. What we're talking about is that other time. And the best call centers that I've seen take this time and, you know, make it 90, 93%. Can you ask for more than that? It's pretty tough. So if you go on to the next slide, according to Salesforce, 75% of consumers expect a consistent experience in your brand. And 67% mention bad customer experiences as a reason for churn. Now, that's found with customer service rep doing the customer service function, salespeople, and sometimes service people, because in some companies you have customer service people and service people separate, all doing separate functions. And we've found in a lot of cases that they don't have the same system. They don't carry the same customer experience. And so it is
Steve, sorry.
very important. Go ahead.
I'm jumping in because right now I'm working with a client who, it's an inbound e-commerce brand, okay? And they're looking for what they're calling like proactive engagement. And I think it's what like probably you or me would call like, you know, a really clear and solid retention strategy. And so I know that It might be helpful if we use like a real example of a customer who actually has, say, I'm going to guess, I think it's about 15 agents, right? Of these 15 agents, they're located all over the world. There's some in Australia, there's some in Germany, their majority are in Los Angeles. And I think I would love it if we could kind of like use them as a use case on how we could apply this strategy of leveraging this team for sales. So I think that as we talk through, I might point some questions your way that are like real life that we're dealing with so that we can really apply your theories. What do you think?
That would be great. So there's 15 agents, and that's worldwide. So obviously they're in all separate time zones. So at any one time, is there 7 or 8 or less or more people online?
Yeah, so during what we would call like normal operating hours, so let's, as a rule of thumb, just say 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's when you're going to find the majority of the support team. There is some overlap with the Berlin office. They are on, say, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. local time there. And so there's a gap between, you know, call it 9 to 10-ish, where you're fully covered in both locations.
Okay, so 2 questions from that. One is it a service or is it a product?
It's a product. It's an e-commerce company. They sell a product. They sell and ship a product to their consumer base.
Okay. And do you know from the inbound reports that there are those gaps for half of them, all of them?
Let's say that there's a gap. Let's say that there's maybe that their occupancy is in the 70s. So let's say that they probably have 10 to 15% of the time that we can be using for potentially proactive outreach or some sort of sales strategy.
Okay. Then that becomes, what can you do with that 10 to 15%?
Right.
What agents would be available to make those 10 to 15% calls? And at the same time, what type of agents are there?
Mm-hmm.
We found that when you hire people and you let them know their expectations in the beginning, it's a lot easier to start with that process, that they're sales oriented as well. Are you willing to follow up? Are you willing to make those outbound calls? And when you have that, you can make those calls available for those people. So one great strategy was to take the demographics of your customer.
Mm-hmm.
We're assuming that you've followed up on the ones you've had and the prospects you had to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Take the demographics of those customers and then set up a program to reach out to those customers, creating more interest, creating more leads, creating, if an appointment is necessary, whether it's online or in person. In this case, it seems to be online. And can you generate sales that way as well?
Mm-hmm.
Did that kind of answer that?
Yeah, and I think as we go on, I'll probably get some more tips on how we're going to make that happen. But they have an appointment setting component. Right now, what they want to focus on is outreach to get more engagement, because they sell a product, but it's actually more of a lifestyle brand. So it's like once the product is sold, they don't want it to just be, I bought it, I used it, that's it. It's like, I bought it, I want to use it, I want to change the way that I'm functioning, and I want this company to be my partner along the way. And so we want to introduce, and also the hires that were made were not prepared for sales, if you will. So we'll be looking at different personalities internal to determine who might have a knack for that. so that we can separate the team into service and sales.
And based on that, do you think there would only be a few of them, or are you looking at the future needs to, as you bring in new hires, or no?
Well,
To create that function.
yeah, I haven't done their forecast yet.
Okay.
So I don't know. That won't be till end of the month. So right now, like maybe like let's see what's on the next slide, because we can start moving into finding those opportunities and those synergies to leverage the team that we have right now.
Okay, and that's a perfect, you brought up a perfect point, because the first point that I would bring up would be is in the process of setting them up, to become the customer, you want to tell them, as part of our process, we want to keep in touch with you, we want to follow up, we want to let you know about new products and services that we offer. Is it okay that we do that as part of this process? So you're letting them know, you're getting their okay, and then you're getting their okay to get the follow-up calls. And at the same time, as you can see, it's helpful to generate referrals. There are a couple of ways, schools of generating referrals, and some people will attempt to generate referrals when they're at their highest point. Their highest point is when the customer is sold. Other schools of thought are they followed up a couple of times. Have we given you this? Have we given you that? Yes. Is there anybody else that you could tell me that could use our service, types of things? And so I'm kind of going backwards here. It provides feedback with the records of interactions in the customer base. And certainly the customer base can be set up so that a pool of people could make the calls like we're talking about, or you could say each one of these people, we want you to make 15 or 20 of those types of calls on a daily basis. Let's look at it after a month or so and then see where we're at, what's happened with it. In other words, it's given more opportunities with that gap time.
Is it, when you mentioned earlier how the CRMs, which is the customer relationship management system that sales uses, is often different than what service uses. So when you're talking about providing feedback on the interactions with the customer base, is the recommendation here to then give shared insights into both systems, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yes, obviously the newest systems and the providers are attempting to put it all together. And there are some situations with budgets that you already have, quote unquote, system A, we're not able to get system B, and our system does or does not do it. You would make fewer contacts if it was separated, because there's a little more work involved in putting them into a separate system. But the benefit is still higher, or still a lot more than not doing it at all. Because, and I'll say this, and I'll probably say it again. What I get most of the time when a company is not using that gap time to make follow-ups is, oh, we keep them busy doing paperwork. Well, what paperwork? Well, a lot of times that can't be answered either, because it's not tracked. But back to your question, yeah, it's still beneficial to make these follow-ups, in this case, these follow-ups. And you're certainly establishing a customer relationship wherever possible as well.
So this is like
the more touch points,
right.
The better the communication. Right.
And you work a lot with Salesforce. I work a great deal with Zendesk. So Salesforce and Zendesk, they integrate with each other, but they also compete with each other. And so in my mind, let's say that we're looking at Zendesk is to service cloud what Salesforce is to Zendesk Sunrise, which is their sales CRM. So I know that through integrations that I've seen and done in the past, and take this with a grain of salt, because I promise you, I probably do maybe 2 Zendesk implementations a quarter, let's say. Every time I do it, it's different. And there's something new.
Okay.
So right now there's a iframe window that integrates with Salesforce that will provide some insights on said customer. You can also make sure that any record of a phone call or a ticket, if you will, gets pushed back and forth to Salesforce. So there's something that lives in both places. Freshdesk has this, Help Scout has it. Everything can still integrate with Salesforce. So in your mind, are you seeing like a call list, if you will, of customers that need to be contacted with some detail on what information we want to get from said customer? And so the agent will then attempt the call, make a record of whatever the outcome was, and kind of move it along. Is that what you're seeing?
That is what I'm seeing with managers with call center managers that are active in setting it up. Certainly, agents would not be doing it on their own because it has to be set up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely the active call centers are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as their volume increases and the gap gets smaller, depending upon their size of the call center, that could get smaller, and then they're just giving them a smaller amount of prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Or as they hire more people, sometimes when there is a gap, there's more people to follow up with those prospects as well.
I see. Okay. Can we talk a little bit about the sales strengths?
Yes. I kind of went backwards in the service strengths, but on the sales strengths, we obviously want to make reps aware of points of friction in the sales process. A lot of times, someone buys something, and then the customer service rep is the first person for them to follow up with. And so it's very important that they're aware of those types of sales strengths as well. And customer service reps actually have to have, a little bit of both. In the case of following up on prospects, you want them to have both. The best customer service reps I have found are proactive in the sales process as well. And a lot of them are very comfortable in that process because, quote unquote, those quotas aren't there all day to make that sale. So they're more comfortable in explaining the process. So it's important to train them in the sales process as well.
Got it. I'm taking some nuggets away because I think that when we start talking about the strategy for how we're going to use that time, actually I'm going back to the point that you and I just had about the leveraging agents who may not necessarily be sales minds to fill that time. So it's almost like a benefit to leverage those who are not sales mind in proactive engagement where it doesn't feel like there's a quota responsibility. And then maybe have the folks who are doing your hardcore retention, like maybe you're trying to save subscribers or things like that. That might be more of your sales mind. And then your service mind is probably better in proactive outreach. What do you think about that?
I definitely think along those lines as well. It also presents an opportunity for prospects that aren't a good fit. Mm-hmm. And so the customer service reps are making those follow-ups, and they're they're identifying the better customers as well. And obviously, in the example given with the commerce, we're following up to make them a long-term company. And in the process of finding that out, we find out maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And the ones that are not, we're not spending our time calling them over and over as well. We're spending our time finding the ones that are, and to upsell and to cross-sell and those sorts of things.
Got it.
We're actually talking to the right, the right types of prospects.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to move to the next one.
Okay.
All right. You might have touched on this one, but let's.
I kind of, yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah.
Certainly, Salesforce is they like to say they're a, one for all for one. There are certainly others out there that do a great job, and there are others out there that, the budget fits in line a little more. And I've certainly seen others, especially on the outbound side, that are very, very inexpensive and, give you, huge value.
Do you have examples of those? Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. One of them is it's a program I use as well, and it's called VanillaSoft. And it not only do you make the dial, but you because most of them do, you click on the dial and it's linked to a phone, and usually the phone on your computer to a that type of phone, but it also linked to a desk phone, and it sends the emails in the templates automatically. But the biggest thing it does is when management sets up the process, it works on a routing system very similar to if you called if you called the phone company, you called the electric company, press 1 for this, 2 for this. It's taking what are your best prospects and routing them next. So in most cases, one of your best prospects is someone that looked into your website. If anyone listening notices that, I looked at this company's website and all of a sudden I got a call 10 minutes later. Well, that's because when someone finished up the previous call, they clicked on the next call. That was the next call because it's first in line in the routing process. Second in line would be any people you've spoken to. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. Give me a call back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. That's definitely second in line. Third in line would be prospects that you didn't get a hold of, and they're basically in the queue. They're very similar to the inbound process. And then last, and it's usually last in everybody I've seen, is the cold outbound prospects. And once you're set up going a few months, then a lot of your prospects are people you've spoken to and you're calling them at the right time. And that's what VanillaSoft does, and that's what VanillaSoft does on a very inexpensive basis. Because
do you know, so when we talk about omni-channel strategy, one of my biggest qualms, I guess, with omni-channel is that there are a lot of systems that allow you to communicate with customers in several different ways, but they are not intelligent enough to route contacts to you. So for example, the only one I know of right now is Service Cloud. That doesn't mean that's the only one out there, but I know that they have more of a smart routing experience. And I think Freshdesk has something coming. But the thought process would be this. I am working emails. I'm actively engaged in an email. Does VanillaSoft, to your knowledge, have an integration strong enough to say, Ty is actively working an email right now, do not send her a call? Do you know of that?
Yes and no. If
Okay.
you're in the middle of a call, it's not going to route you anything until you finish that call.
Right.
The no part is, does it accept the email inbound and route that as the next call? I've been told Oh, one more time. The answer is yes. Wow, it almost passed me. Yes,
Okay,
the system knows when an email has been opened,
got it.
and then you can set it up to call it as the next call, like in the same routing procedure that we're talking about.
Yeah,
You can wait an hour, you can wait a day. So whatever you set it up as, it'll automatically feed it to you.
got it. Okay, okay, cool. Let's move to the next one. Before the sale, during the sale. I feel like we touched on a lot of this stuff because we've just been having dialogue. So let's talk
Right.
before the sale.
Okay, so there's actually, oh yeah.
Is this the proactive
So,
that we were discussing a little bit earlier?
yeah, customers switching from a competitor due to poor service will usually tell the rep why. And so this is the sale that you're about to get.
Yeah,
So you definitely want to put it into the system somewhere, because this is the reason they made the decision to switch to you. You certainly, and in a case where it's products purchased over and over, they decide who they're buying from. That's one scenario, and the
yeah,
scenario that we're talking about. It should definitely be entered, because you don't want those. You don't want that to happen in your own process, and
right.
you also want to touch upon it. And when you say it's before the sale, it's you're explaining that as you're trying to enter right into the sale.
It's so funny that you say that. I love like when I learn things that are like almost like, well, duh, because I think about from my perspective, right? Like I often will tell a business why I'm working with them over someone else. And people tell me why they're working with me over another, team or company. And I haven't been capturing that. So now I need to capture that. That is super valid. That's something I didn't even think about.
And you're talking in your own case, is that correct?
Yeah, like
Or are you talking when you? Yeah.
both actually. Like for example, I spoke with a client. This was like in say Q3 last year, and he worked with me because he said that I was the only person that could do everything from end to end as it relates to the customer experience. And everyone that he was contracting with before only did a certain piece. So if they did a Zendesk build out, they weren't willing to write the macros. If they did guide, they weren't going to help you to build out your help center. They were just going to give you the framework. And the only parts I didn't do were like the custom development. That's not in my wheelhouse. That's not something that we'll take on. I have partners for that, but that's why he chose to work with me, is because no matter what was happening, whether it was from omni-channel, learning and development, it was workforce management, or the technology, like all of it was something that we could do.
Okay. And continuing on that, because that's basically the next point, because on the flip side, your sales team needs to stay up to date with issues that your customer service team has, and vice versa. And you're talking about some of that in regards to, okay, do we do this? Do we do this?
Yeah.
We offer all of this, and we want them to know, and we want them to know on both sides of the scenario. And when they do, and obviously in a case, let's say like Zendesk, they're automatically configuring, the hundreds, if not thousands, of inquiries that they're the same inquiries that you transfer onto your FAQ. These are the types of things that you want both the sales team and the service team to know about each other, so that the reps can uncover these. And this is all, you could say it's before, you could say it's during, you could probably say it's after as well. And now during the sale, if a customer decides to buy, the last thing you want, obviously, is a reason to change their minds. So and this is the same type of thing we've been talking about all the way through. You certainly don't want any delay. You want them to understand the whole process, as you're making the sale, but you also want any follow-up and a quick follow-up. And if it's something you need to look up, then you're following that, and then having both the sales and the service team with both information, both sets of information, helps with that as well. And of course, the CRM will say all day. The CRM people and salespeople and companies that our system helps with that as well. And then finally, after the sale, the ultimate goal is to build a long-term relationship. Happy customers will become loyal customers, but they will tell few people. We all know the scenario that an unhappy customer tells 3 times as many people, and you certainly don't want that. So you want the happiest customers, and how can I help you? And one more time, in getting that interaction to become a long-term relationship. And can we make that call, in 2 or 4 weeks or whatever the case is for that particular product?
Got it.
So.
Okay. No, this is good. This is good. I've got some content for my blog.
Sales is you can. It's a generic term where it can be just hundreds of things. It can be just a few things. In the idea is, where do you start?
Yeah.
And so I hope that we have uncovered a few items specifically. People that take customer service agents that take call after call. Do they have that time? And so I certainly appreciate you giving me this time, and we'll go from there.
Steve, I have a question. This is Dana.
Yes.
So if you have an e-commerce company that's fairly new, and they have their CX reps that they've hired as your typical service reps, and year or two down the line they realize that now they need to get into sales, and they're not interested in hiring sales reps. They want to transfer that sales knowledge to their existing representatives. How do you go about that? If you're not really sales minded, how do you go about transferring that sales knowledge to those service reps?
So are you talking about the service reps that are in your employ?
Yes.
Okay. Certainly, that's where my sales pitch comes in, and we can certainly help in that process. And there is customer service 101 as well as sales 101 to be able to let's just say in our case, what we would do is we would learn a little bit about your business, and then we would put a program together based on, okay, this is a program based on calling this type of prospect A, B, and C. And then we would develop sales scripts and then answers and objections to those scripts to where, and when you talk about sales scripts, I'm not talking about, these, the call you get at dinner time, they're reading word by word. We're talking about guidelines. And then saying, okay, what do you think the numbers should be based on this? And then we look at them at 30 and 60 days saying, okay, the numbers are actually this based on what we've done. And does this work? Yes. Does this not work? No. And then kind of go from there. So it's setting up a framework for your company based on, the years of experience, and then implementing that.
Okay. So you offer sales training?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Steve. I think that was really good. I literally have 2 pages of notes.
Oh my goodness, you made me feel good.
No, seriously. I'll tell I'm a service person. I'm service. I'm probably more on that proactive side of like reaching out to be helpful. I'm not great at the sales piece. I'm a service person. So like hearing this is really helpful for me. And I think that, some of the feedback on how you can, better listen for opportunities is really key. And like using the resources in the team that you have already to like really build out that process, I think that's pretty solid. So thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. Thank you everyone for having me and listening today.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to switch gears actually, and just talk about opportunities with current clients of mine. Right now I'm working with a company called yoursuper.com. They provide plant-based proteins. Everything that they offer you is plant-based, vegan, wholesome, good for your body. And they're looking for a few roles. So if you know of anyone who would be a good fit for any of these, send me an email, ty@theworkforcepro.com, and just let me know which role and also include a resume so that I can pass that along if I think it's a good fit. The other company I'm working with is a SaaS company called Thought Industries out of Boston. I'm actually doing a lot of hands-on for them. So we're looking to get the support manager and tier 1 roles filled quickly, but filled with the right skill set and the right person. These are in-office roles located in Boston, in the Boston area. So if you know of someone, again, pass along their information. They'll probably talk to me first. I'm doing the screening, but if there's a fit, happy to pass them along because it is imperative that we get the right fit for these roles. We've got a lot to do on this project, really, remaining of February into March. So I want to make sure I deliver for them. So feel free to send that information over. Also, if for those of you on the line, if you all have roles or positions that you need shared with our audience, feel free to send those to me. I'm happy to put them up. All right. The next thing is a company called Rebel One. So Jeff Beisman, he's the head of business development there. Jeff is actually the person responsible for bringing me into ShoeDazzle. And to give you some context, I started at ShoeDazzle in November 2012. And he and I are still in contact to this day. We meet up every now and again for lunch, but he started a new journey as the head of BD at this company. And what he does is they focus on finding hard to fill marketing roles, typically director level and above, but they will fill some others. But the idea is when you have that, very challenging head of marketing who's got like a specific type of skill set and it's not easy to find, this might be a company that you want to reach out to. His email is listed there. Just let him know that I referred you. He'll treat you very kindly. He's a super cool guy. So I just wanted to share that with you, that we're recommending them if you're trying to fill high-level marketing roles. All right, next time, because we're good, we've got Vlad on the line. So we've got, Vlad, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, there he is. Hey. So we're going to Vlad's actually going to co-host with me next month on March 10th. And we're going to look at his tool. So this is how I describe it. If you're using Slack, which most companies are, especially in the B2B space, and you have Zendesk. So I'm going to use one of my clients who is in the B2B space. They use Slack internally, but they use Zendesk for customer facing. So imagine if you could invite your clients to your Slack channel And for them, it's one less tool to use. They're communicating with you directly through Slack, and those messages are coming in to Zendesk as live chats, and there's no additional tool or resource that you need for your agents. It's just very seamless, and you can tick it off of that. That's what his product does, so I'll let him tell you about it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, it's a very good description. Thank you for that. I think the only thing I'll add to that is that not only Slack, we also support Microsoft Teams, since some of your customers might be on Microsoft Teams, and then we are also supporting Salesforce, what's called their support tool as well. So we're trying to expand the platform so that kind of you can connect to your customers wherever your internal systems are, whatever your custom systems are, and have like a very personalized conversation, have a very engaged back and forth with your customer without having to change your process in any way.
So he'll be Steve next time. we're gonna have Vlad.
Yeah, those are some big shoes to fill. I don't know if I could do that.
We're gonna turn over the reins. If you guys need to get in touch with Steve, just so that you know, his email is steve@theworkforcepro.com. If you visit our website, www.theworkforcepro.com/intro, you can set up time with Steve there. You can also set up time with me there. So feel free to reach out if you want a consultation, or if you just want to chat, or if you have a question. We are available to help. We want to help. And so I just want to thank everybody who was able to make it. Again, I will have this posted to the YouTube channel so that you can look at the playback. I typically will do timestamps to just save you time, so that you know if you want to jump ahead to certain points, we can do that. So look for that like within the next 2 days or so. If there are no questions, I think we are all done here.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you,
Guys so much. Everybody have a lovely day. Steve, great job. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Okay,
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.